You're most welcome to International Desk this week. My name is Mojisola Sholaja. This week, we are exploring the world's most pressing issues, as usual, on International Desk. Today, we're focusing on the devastating crisis unfolding in South Sudan, a country that has been plagued by violence, displacement, and humanitarian catastrophes. Joining me today is a professor of politics, peace and security at University of Juba, South Sudan, a former child soldier, a renowned political and security analyst. He is Professor Abraham NYUON. Good afternoon, Prof. It's afternoon in Nairobi, where you are at the moment.
Good afternoon to you.
Yes, glad to have you on the program. Let's begin.
Sure, I'm happy also to be here. I'm very happy to be here on the program too.
Oh yes, thank you. Now, let's begin with the root cause of the crisis we're having in South Sudan. It's been ongoing for quite some time now. So what is, in few words, just tell us what is happening, what is fueling the crisis, the cause of the crisis?
Well, thank you very much, Salaja, for inviting me to come and talk about the issues that is affecting South Sudan. I would like to say it in a few words that what has fueled the crisis in South Sudan is because of the trust deficit within the political leadership and the fact that people believe that they have liberated the country and they want to practice. Is it all clear?
Yes, I'm with you, Prof. So it's not about...
Is it not clear?
Yes, it is. The audio is clear.
Okay, so I'll come back. I would like to say that what has really caused this crisis is what we call a political deficit within a political leadership. And we have known indeed that South Sudan is one of the countries that came out of the liberation struggle, which culminated through the referendum where people voted for secession. But now immediately people began upcoming the government, the mistrust which happened during the liberation time, because during the liberation time, the current vice president and the president were the top commanders in the Sudan People Liberation Army. And at some point, the first vice president was able to join the NCP, National Congress Party, and abandon the liberation movement. And toward the signing of peace agreement, he was able to come on board again. And as a result of that, from that time, when the former chair of the liberation passed on through an helicopter crash, Dr. John Garang Damadio, then Salva Kiir took over. This is where now Salva Kiir was able to become suspicious of Riek as somebody who can overthrow him, and Riek also becomes suspicious to Kiir as if President Kiir can never give him a chance to be able to root Sudan or South Sudan.
No, so it is not a spillover of what is happening in Sudan. It has nothing to do with Sudan.
Well, it has nothing to do with what is happening in Sudan, although what is happening in South Sudan, now, has got some issues in the sense that when the succession came, South Sudan has oil deficit. And that oil used to pass through Sudan to the Port Sudan. And when this conflict came, the conflict of Sudan now, there was the pipeline was damaged, which reduced the level of income that come to the country. And as a result of this, I strongly believe, since the government of peace agreement by president, there is a problem here because resources that are coming through non-oil revenue, then that resources is not enough. And it makes people now to struggle for more power to become as a way of accessing the power.
Okay, now that you have actually told us that it's partially, in a way, it is a spillover of what is happening in Sudan. Let me now come back to South Sudan per se. Would you say the international communities, they are doing enough in bringing down this crisis? Would you say they are doing enough? You know, when you talk of agencies like United Nations, for example, what are they doing?
Well, I can say yes or no. Yes, because we have seen into it that in South Sudan, because of the crisis, people are not able to do some farming. People, there is insecurity everywhere, and it is now the role of international community to provide food items to feed the people in the ID camps. It's also the role of international community to provide healthcare and education system, and it is also the role of international community also to provide the protection of civilians through United Nations mission in South Sudan. But at the same time, I could also say the international community is not doing enough, because you see into it that what the international community is doing is what we call sanction of the top leaders, and once they are sanctioned, it makes them to harden their heart, so that they could not be able to collaborate among themselves. They could not also be able to collaborate and cooperate with the international community. The concept of also arm embargo that has been given to the government, it has also reduced the level of unification of the army, which is what is now kept the country hostage. And as a result of this, the international community was supposed to come in and say what are the requirements that are needed, because if they are for the people of South Sudan, they know that the life of the people of South Sudan is in the hand of these leaders that are being sanctioned. And continue sanctioning them on a daily basis is trying to like putting maybe fuel into the fire, and it will not quench that fire to be put down. And as a result of this, the international community should be blamed for not working very hard to bring these leaders together so that they reduce the level of burden over the people of South Sudan.
Okay, I'll ask you about the roles that other countries nearby are playing, but in the region are playing. But before then, let me ask you about the present situation in South Sudan now. Few days ago, some days ago, the government forces actually took over the palace again, the presidential palace. What does this mean? Is it a sign of victory?
I did not get your question well.
Okay, I said, I think it was on Friday or thereabouts. The government forces took over the presidential palace.
Oh, in South Sudan?
Yes. Okay, let me just ask, what is the situation of things in South Sudan now?
Well, for the last 3 weeks, there has been a high tension, especially within the government of South Sudan, and especially in the capital city, Juba, because between the top opposition leader, who is currently the first vice president, and the ruling party, which is the SPLM. Yeah. This came as a result of the two groups having issues over one area within the country, which is very far, a place called Upper Nile, Nasser County. And as a result of that tension, where soldiers that belong to the government side were killed by civilians that might have colluded somehow with the IO soldiers, that now might have angered the government, and the government was able to put some leaders, especially top opposition leaders, some from the Gerald, who are the army, some who are ministers, were put in prison, because the government was believing that these people are contributing to fueling that conflict. And as that tension has never reduced until now, what has happened is that the first vice president, who is the chair of government cluster, which one of the ministries, the security component, had never been operational since this thing started, which means the first vice president is always in his house and could not be able to move because of this lack of trust.
Okay, now, thank you for that. Let me now ask you about the roles the countries within the region are playing, because I read yesterday that the first Vice President, Riek Machar, is telling Uganda, is actually warning Uganda and telling the international communities that Uganda is bringing something arms, sort of. So what are the countries, the roles they are playing in all of this?
You see into it that probably at the very beginning, like 2 weeks ago, there was a kind of fooling rope between the government and the media houses, where the media house used to ask the Minister of Information, who is an official spokesperson of the government, whether there is a presence of the Ugandan army within the country, which he definitely said there was no presence. But almost 3 days or 4 days later on, the minister was able to acknowledge that we invite them to come here and be part of the people who control the city, because we don't want the country to go back to war. The question is here now that the first vice president is at liberty and has the right to question that, but the fact remains that we are in a fragile state, and the peace agreement is a peace agreement that was not enshrined on something that can be respected forever. And as a result of this, it has always been extended almost 2 times now against the will of the people of South Sudan. And this is what has always been done by both parties. And I said in one of my interviews, in one of the media, I said the vice president should not be able to lament about the violation of the peace agreement, because this agreement has been violated several times, by himself being included, because he has refused, he had colluded with some of his colleagues and everybody in the government, both from opposition and the government, and they like to extend by themselves instead of asking the opinion of the people. They have also taken the country hostage by trying to maintain separate armies, which cannot happen, because the issue is, if the army is integrated, then they know that they will not be able to defend their interests. Therefore, all the violations are the ones that are happening because each of them want to consolidate power. The president don't want to give over his seat because he believes it's legitimate. The first vice president is looking forward to say, okay, you have led for long, it is also my time to be able to leave. And this is where the problem is. So the only way to create a status quo is to make the president to remain as the president and make the first vice president remain the first vice president. So you take us back to the status quo. And for how long will the country be a hostage having the status quo?
Earlier on, you talked about that South Sudan, actually, the government of South Sudan invited Uganda, something like that, to avoid another war. Is that avoidable?
Well, that thing is, some of the things that are happening in countries like South Sudan, where they just come from independent, and this has been always how most of the country has been grown out of conflict to stability, is that there seems to be a kind of anarchy. When we talk anarchy, we are saying there seem to be presence of laws and rules, including the constitution, but those things seem not to be effective. What is effective is the person who is in charge of power. Let's say, if the president in South Sudan, now President Kiir, has been issuing presidential decree, and presidential decree now are the ones that are more absolute than what the constitution could be able to say. And this is what has been enjoyed. It is something that has been enshrined even in the peace agreement, that all the nominees who can be appointed to the government should be appointed to the president. And if that thing is the peace agreement, then this is where the problem, this is where they're beating people. Why? Because the president felt that he is the head of the state, and that is true constitutionally and through the peace agreement, which means any other person that needs to oppose him, that person should leave the government. And this is where the opposition are missing it, that they behave as if they have their own government. But there is only one government, a government of national unity. We show only one hierarchy of how, and one hierarchy and protocol of how things are done within the country. So you oppose the hierarchy of the government, which means you are the first person who will violate the peace agreement, not the one who is going to suspend you.
Okay, Professor NYUON, we're taking a short break now. When we come back, we'll talk about the role of tribalism, because I saw what you posted, that tribalism, anything tribalism should be banned and it should be criminalized. We'll also talk about the impact of the crisis on education and the economy. So we'll be back shortly. We're taking a short break now. International Desk will be back in a short while. Stay. You're still watching International Desk live from our studios in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, and I still have my guest, Professor Abraham NYUON, Professor of Political Science from the University of Juba in South Sudan. Currently is in Nairobi on a sabbatical. So, Professor NYUON, welcome back to International Desk. Now, let's talk about the impact of this on the region. You have countries like Ethiopia, Uganda, and others surrounding you. So what is the impact of this on those countries and the economy at large?
Well, thank you once more, Solange, for this opportunity again. And I would like to say that, you know, when there is a conflict that as it borders with other people, there is what we call it, create a concept of security dilemma. What does that mean? You see that when South Sudan armed itself, and especially with light weapons, and you see all these weapons with the citizens, you could be able to see that some of these weapons could spill over to other countries, which could go and create insecurity in those countries. Especially it can create insecurity in Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and this has been happening. We have seen the same, some of these civilians who were armed at some point been crossing over to Ethiopia to go and abduct children, and they have also been going at the same time to go and collect with the neighboring people who are from the other side. And as a result of this, if the neighboring communities, the neighboring countries I mean, could not be able to work hard to create stability within South Sudan, this one will spill over and it will also create instability within the region.
Now, you are a professor of political science and you were once a child soldier. Tell us in few words your experience and what you think should be the way out when we talk about the welfare of soldiers in South Sudan.
Well, one thing I can say is that when I joined the army almost over 30 years ago, and there was a very high discipline in the army, it was also a thought of sacrifice, that people sacrifice themselves and you don't expect anything out of it. But that spirit of liberation died immediately we got our independence, because we changed sacrifice into personal benefit. And this is where we have got it wrong. You see into it that Solange, in South Sudan where we speak now, soldiers have gone for over a year or almost to a year without getting their salary. These are people who have children, these are people who have families, they have husbands, they have wives, and they have people that to take care of. And these are the people who are expected to protect the country. So what has happened now, because of the economic crisis, which is brought by political instability, soldiers are grouped to be able to pay allegiance to individual leaders. And they are only ready to die for those leaders because it is those leaders who are only providing them with services. And this is where now, if leaders want to fight to get to the top government position, so that they get resources to come and maintain their own local army. And this is where this country will never be stable as long as we continue having separate armies within the country.
Now, let's now come to the issue of tribalism. A few days ago, you posted that the concept of tribalism should be banned and it should be criminalized. Why did you say this?
You see into it that this has become a big concern to me. And it became a big concern because I've seen over years, especially from 2013 up to now, that is around 12 years, we have been always segregated against our tribe. Some people are being killed innocently because of the tribe they came from. And that is why I said in that post that it should be criminalized because none of us has a choice to choose which community they came from. This was also supported by my visit to Kigali, and I went to Kigali Memorial Genocide Center, where now in Rwanda, if you call anybody by their tribe, that is enough for you to be taken to prison. So now, somebody is able to say, I want to be a leader. They mobilize their community, and once their community begin fighting the government, when the government decides to make peace agreement with them, they come to the capital city, sit there, enjoy the privilege, forget about their community, just only accumulating wealth. And we want the government, when the president, for example, remove them, they take the little wealth, go and distribute to the very vulnerable people in the village, so that they mobilize them again to come and fight for him to come in power. So if the tribe is our law, then you go up and mobilize your people, you'll be the first victim of the law.
Okay, let's round off with you being a professor of politics, security, and peace. What is the way forward in South Sudan, for South Sudan to be peaceful? Yes,
the way forward, number one, is that our leaders need to embrace compromise. They need to say enough is enough. We have liberated these people, and we cannot kill the people that we have liberated, because you cannot liberate somebody and the guard also give the burden of killing them. So, and this is where, if our leaders say, we are brothers, we are not going anywhere because none of us is going to leave South Sudan, the only thing we need to do is to have peace. And I'll give you a good example. You know, in 2018, our two principles compromised seriously. When the peace agreement was having a stalemate in Addis Ababa on two issues, because when the peace was signed in 2015 and the government was formed in 2016, the conflict came again. And now, when the conflict came, the current first vice president went back to the bush, and the president formed 32 states rather than the 10 states that exist. So when the peace was being negotiated, it became one of the contentious issues. So now there was also the issue of two armies, that Riek want to come with his own army. So when these two were put on the table, President Kiir made an order to reverse the changing of 32 states into 10 states, and said, over to you, Riek Machar, now I've done one thing, one of the compromise, you can do another one. So Dr. Riek said, I also compromise, I must come to Juba without my army. I must come to Juba without my security. That is why we have lived with stability for the last 6 years. So if such a compromise continues, and having a heart of dialogue, then that could be the best way forward, and that begins with leaders. Number two is that they should be, the international community should provide civic engagement to the people of South Sudan, so that the people will be enlightened about their rights, so that now when anybody wants to come and incite them so that they will kill each other, they will say, go and also fight among yourselves first. Okay. That could be the second thing. Lastly, there should be issues of spirit of reconciliation. Okay? Issues of spirit of reconciliation would be prioritized. That South Sudanese should see each other as brothers, rather than seeing leaders as people who could create the problem and they can follow them when they will not have any benefit out of it. Lastly, we have been in war for many years. Many of our brothers and sisters have died. That has not added us any value. It is a time that we can learn. And if we fail to learn, and if the conflict continues, this time around, it will not be about killing the normal citizen, it will be about losing some of the top leaders in the country.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor Abraham NYUON. I believe the main thing is what you said, there should be the spirit of reconciliation. I'll stand by that, and I will end the program with that. Wherever we are, there should be the spirit of reconciliation. Thank you once again, Professor NYUON. It's great having you to talk about the crisis in South Sudan and preferring way forward.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine.
Enjoy your stay in Nairobi.
Thank you.
Yes. That is all we have on International Desk for this week. Many thanks to Professor Abraham NYUON, a professor of politics, peace and security from the University of Juba in South Sudan. He has been able to tell us the cause of the crisis in South Sudan and, of course, the way forward. So we have come to the end of the program International Desk for this week. Thank you for being a part of it. Together, let's do it again next week. Goodbye.